Imagine walking into a luxury restaurant and being treated with disdain just because of your appearance. Unfair, right? Now imagine that the person being humiliated has more power than anyone in the room could ever imagine. That's exactly what happened when a waitress insulted Keanu Reeves, without realizing he was the owner of the restaurant. But what happens next? Well, that's the part no one saw coming, and the lesson that everyone needed to learn. We live in a world where appearances are deceiving, where people judge each other in a matter of seconds without even trying to understand who they really are. But is that mindset really worth it? Keanu, with his quiet demeanor and unshakable composure, showed that true greatness doesn't need to be flashy. What he did in this situation wasn't just a response. It was a powerful lesson about humility, respect, and how a person's true character always finds a way to shine through. What makes this story even more fascinating is that Keanu could have exposed the waitress in a humiliating way. He could have demanded respect through force, but instead, he made a choice that was far more impactful. And that choice didn't just change her life, it changed the lives of everyone who witnessed what happened. That night at the restaurant became a perfect example of how small actions can carry huge lessons. If you've ever been underestimated, judged, or treated with disrespect, this story will resonate deeply with you. And more than that, it will show you the power of handling things differently, of surprising those who look down on you, and of leaving an impact that no one will ever forget. And now I ask you, are you ready to find out what really happened that night? The night was lively at Lumiere, a restaurant known for its exclusive reservations and high society clientele. Among the well-trained waiters and the clinking of crystal glasses, a man dressed simply walked through the door. Worn-out jeans, a black jacket with no visible brand, and a cap covering part of his face. At first glance, anyone would think he was out of place, someone who had wandered in by mistake. But he knew exactly where he was. The real problem was that no one else did. And honestly, that's exactly how he wanted it. After all, some lessons can only be taught when no one sees them coming. Ashley, one of the most experienced waitresses in the restaurant, noticed him immediately. Her sharp gaze scanned him from head to toe, and within seconds, she had already made her judgment. People like him didn't just walk into Lumiere, not as customers anyway. With an impatient sigh, she approached, crossing her arms. "May I help you?" Her voice carried a thinly veiled air of superiority. It was the typical approach of someone who had already decided the conversation wasn't worth having. The man, however, simply smiled slightly and asked for a table for one. The restaurant had rules and Ashley knew them, but to her there was something more important. This man simply did not fit in. He didn't exude the confidence and status their usual customers displayed, so her approach became almost comical. "Are you sure you want to dine here?" she asked, her voice tinged with doubt as her eyes evaluated him again. She wasn't concerned with customer experience. She was concerned with the image of the restaurant. After all, what would it look like if a man dressed so plainly took up a table among businessmen and celebrities? But to the man in jeans and a jacket, the whole situation felt like a staged performance. He didn't seem bothered, nor did he push back against her attitude. He simply remained there, patient, like someone who had long since learned that the real battles in life aren't won with sharp words, but with unexpected actions. Ashley, however, had no idea what was coming next. Lumiere wasn't just a luxury restaurant. It was a status symbol in Beverly Hills. Its walls were decorated with priceless artwork, its chandeliers shimmered with imported crystals, and the menu, designed by award-winning chefs, transformed ordinary meals into unforgettable culinary experiences. This wasn't a place people just came to eat. They came to be seen. And for Ashley, a waitress who had worked there for years, every detail mattered. Fair customers' appearance, tone of voice, posture. Everything indicated who deserved to be treated with respect and who should be dismissed as quickly as possible. Ashley wasn't new to the job. She knew how the game worked. She had learned which customers tipped well and which ones were just there to flaunt their wealth. Her problem, however, was her obsession with judging people at first glance. In this world of appearances, she had convinced herself that a person's worth was measured by their clothing, their car, or the brand of their watch. So, When she saw this man in his worn-out jacket asking for a table, she didn't hesitate. He didn't belong there. What she didn't know was that she was about to learn a lesson that would change her perspective forever. With a condescending look, Ashley led the man to a distant table, tucked away near the restaurant's exit. It was a clear strategy, to keep him out of sight, away from the watchful eyes of the high-profile clientele. A table where he wouldn't draw attention, where no one would question his presence. It was as if she was silently telling him, "Sit here and don't disrupt the atmosphere." But the irony was evident. While she tried to shield him from the judgmental stares of others, she was the one doing the worst judging. The man, however, showed no signs of frustration or discomfort. He accepted the table as if it were the best spot in the house. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with Ashley's impatience. She crossed her arms, expecting him to order something cheap, or better yet, to realize his mistake and leave. But to her surprise, he simply picked up the menu and began browsing through it with absolute ease, as if he belonged there just as much as anyone else. Ashley made no effort to hide her disdain. Her body language spoke volumes. She had already decided that this man did not belong in this restaurant. With an almost mocking tone, she leaned slightly over the table and asked, "Are you sure you know where you are?" The question might have sounded innocent, but its meaning was clear. She wanted to make him feel out of place, to realize that this was not a place for people like him. But once again, the man simply raised his eyes and gave her a small smile, completely unfazed. Frustrated by his lack of reaction, Ashley pushed further. "Well, just so you know, this is one of the most expensive restaurants in town. Maybe you'd like to check the prices before ordering." The comment dripped with venom. She was convinced that there was no way he could afford a meal here. The idea that he was pretending to be someone important annoyed her, but once again, he didn't take the bait. He simply nodded and continued browsing the menu as if her words had no effect on him. Annoyed by his indifference, Ashley took it a step further. Without even asking his preference, she picked up an alternate menu, a list of cheaper wines and smaller dishes rarely offered to the VIP clientele. With a forced smile, she set it down in front of him. "Here are some more affordable options." It was a clear attempt at humiliation. She wanted him to feel small, out of place, undeserving. But the man didn't show a hint of embarrassment. Instead, he glanced at the menu as if it were the most natural thing in the world. His calm demeanor was beginning to make Ashley uneasy. Most people would have reacted by now, by making excuses, getting defensive, or simply leaving. But he just sat there, patient, as if he knew that this situation was far from over. Ashley wasn't about to give up. Seeing that her previous provocations hadn't worked, she decided to push even further. With a fake smile, she leaned slightly toward him and pointed at the most expensive dish on the menu. "You know, this is our signature dish, but, well, I doubt you'd be interested. Maybe you'd prefer something more affordable." The sarcasm in her voice was unmistakable. This was a psychological game. She wanted him to feel small, to admit in some way that he didn't belong there. But once again, he didn't fall for it. With the same calmness he had shown all along, he looked at the menu and without hesitation said, "Actually, I'd like that one." Ashley's smile faltered for a brief second. She wasn't expecting that answer. For a moment, she looked confused, but she quickly regained her composure. "Great choice. Just to confirm, you are aware of the price of that dish, correct?" she insisted, trying once again to intimidate him. But his response came without hesitation. "Yes, and I'd also like a wine to go with it. Your finest one." Now Ashley was losing patience. How could a man dressed so simply be this confident? He didn't look uncomfortable, he didn't try to justify himself, and he definitely wasn't reacting the way she had expected. His unwavering gaze, almost as if he was in complete control, irritated her. The game she thought she was winning was slipping through her fingers, but determined to keep her pride intact, she forced a short laugh and jotted down the order. "Very well, sir, I hope you enjoy your experience." What Ashley hadn't noticed was that other customers had begun paying attention. Among them, an elderly man, well-dressed and seated a few tables away, had been quietly observing the situation. He had noticed Ashley's disrespectful tone and the calmness of the mysterious customer. Something told him that there was more to this situation than met the eye. And perhaps he was right. The first signs of discomfort began spreading through the restaurant. In an establishment where etiquette and discretion were almost sacred, Ashley's behavior was beginning to stand out. Among the guests, an older gentleman, impeccably dressed, watched the scene closely. His years of experience in business had given him a sharp sense for situations like this. He could easily recognize when someone was being mistreated, and what was happening was a clear example of that. What caught his attention the most wasn't the man's simple clothing, but rather his tranquility. Anyone else would have felt humiliated by now. Most people would have either left in embarrassment or tried to defend themselves, but not him. He sat there, completely at ease, as if he knew exactly what was coming. And that intrigued the elderly man. Over the years, he had learned that truly powerful people never feel the need to prove themselves, and the man sitting calmly at the table seemed to embody that idea perfectly. The discomfort wasn't just limited to the elderly gentleman. Other customers, accustomed to impeccable service, were also beginning to take notice. Whispered conversations started to emerge between tables, and discreet glances were directed at Ashley. She, however, remained oblivious. She was so focused on trying to humiliate the man in front of her that she didn't realize she was exposing herself instead. The elderly man finally decided to act. With the elegance of someone who had seen it all, he approached the mysterious customer's table. With a friendly smile, he leaned slightly forward and said, "I admire your patience. Not everyone would handle this situation as gracefully as you have." His words were simple, but their meaning was profound. A single exchange of looks was enough for the man in the worn-out jacket to offer a slight smile in return. He knew his patience was about to be rewarded in a way Ashley could never have imagined. The restaurant continued with its usual rhythm, but something was about to break the normalcy of the night. The moment Lumiere's manager stepped out of his office and spotted the mysterious customer, his eyes widened in shock. His heart pounded, and without hesitation, he rushed over to the table. The man in the simple jacket, the one Ashley had tried to humiliate in every possible way, was actually none other than Keanu Reeves, one of the restaurant's owners. Ashley's expression changed instantly. Her shoulders tensed, and a cold wave of panic rushed through her body as she saw how respectfully and nervously the manager approached the man. "Mr. Reeves, what an honor to have you here tonight. My deepest apologies for any inconvenience," the manager said, bowing slightly as a sign of respect. The words echoed in Ashley's ears, and suddenly she realized the weight of her mistake. The man she had disrespected all night was the owner of the very restaurant she worked in. A stunned silence filled the room. Customers who had witnessed Ashley's condescension now stared at her with judgmental eyes. The elderly man who had admired Keanu's patience simply smiled, as if he had always known something extraordinary was about to happen. And indeed it was. Keanu, with his usual calm and humble demeanor, didn't seem offended at all. On the contrary, he saw an opportunity to teach a lesson far more valuable than a simple reprimand. Ashley, now speechless, felt her face burn with shame. Her arrogance had blinded her, and now, faced with the truth, she had no idea how to react. Her body trembled, and her mouth went dry. What would happen next? She knew she could lose her job, but perhaps the biggest loss was realizing that she had wasted an opportunity to treat someone with respect, and now she would pay the price for it. The silence in the restaurant felt endless. Everyone was waiting for Keanu Reeves's reaction. He could have lashed out, could have humiliated Ashley the same way she had tried to humiliate him. But that wasn't who Keanu was. Instead of responding with anger, he chose a different path, a wiser one. He calmly stood up, looked around, and asked for everyone's attention. "Before anything else, I want to make it clear. I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to remind everyone of something essential. Every person deserves respect, regardless of their appearance or social status." His gaze turned to Ashley, but there was no harshness in his voice, no resentment. Too often we're quick to judge without knowing someone's story. But does that make us better, or does it just reinforce the false idea that a person's worth is tied to their clothes, their money, or what they can offer us? He paused, letting his words sink in. The weight of the moment hit Ashley hard, and she could feel tears forming in her eyes. No one had ever spoken to her like this before, and the worst part was, she knew Keanu was right. Then, Keanu did something unexpected. He asked the entire restaurant staff to gather around. This wasn't just a lesson for Ashley, it was for everyone. Service is the soul of this place. But great service isn't just about serving expensive dishes. It's about treating every person with dignity. It doesn't matter if a guest walks in wearing an expensive suit or simple clothes. Everyone deserves the same level of respect. The staff listened in silence, some feeling embarrassed, others feeling deeply moved. It was rare to see someone with so much power act with so much humility. Ashley, now filled with regret, knew she couldn't change the past, but she could change how she acted moving forward. Her pride no longer mattered. She took a deep breath, gathered her courage, and for the first time that night she looked Keanu in the eye with sincerity. I made a mistake. I judged you without knowing you. I shouldn't have done that. Her voice trembled, but it was honest. Keanu simply smiled. We all make mistakes. The real question is, what do we do after that? The weight of Ashley's mistake was heavy. She was no longer the arrogant waitress who had started her shift that night. She was now standing face to face with an undeniable truth. Her view of the world was flawed. For years she had believed that a person's image defined their worth. But there, in front of Keanu Reeves, a powerful man who chose humility over revenge, she realized she had been completely wrong. Swallowing hard, she took a deep breath and found the courage to speak. I really need to change. I've spent too much time judging people by their looks and forgetting what really matters. Keanu watched her closely, but without a trace of superiority. He knew that true transformation doesn't come from harsh punishment, it comes from genuine reflection. With a compassionate look, he said, "The first step to change is recognizing your mistake. The second step is choosing a better path from here on." Ashley nodded, and at that moment she knew she would never treat a customer the same way again. Other restaurant staff members were also deeply impacted. How many times had they judged a customer before even hearing their voice? How many opportunities to be better had they missed simply because they were stuck in a superficial mindset? The impact of that night wouldn't just stay with Ashley. The entire team would start seeing their customers with more humanity. And deep down, that had been Keanu's goal all along. Before leaving, he made sure to emphasize one final point. The world already has enough arrogance. Change starts when we choose to treat others with respect, no matter how they look or what they have. The real question is, what kind of person do you want to be from now on? The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was filled with deep reflection, and in that moment, Ashley understood that real change doesn't happen on the outside. It happens from within. Keanu Reeves walked out of the restaurant without causing a scene, without raising his voice, without forcing his authority. But what he left behind was a message that would echo for a long time. True greatness isn't about flaunting power. It's about using it to teach, inspire, and transform. And that night, without needing anger or punishment, he changed someone's life. Ashley stood frozen for a moment, watching the door where Keanu had left. Her mind was racing with reflections. How could she have been so blind? And how many times before had she made the same mistake without realizing it? It was time to rebuild her perspective. Respect shouldn't be a privilege for some. It should be a right for everyone. At that moment, she made a decision. She would never treat another person that way again. The events of that night didn't stay within the walls of Lumiere. Employees talked about it. Customers shared their experiences. And over time, that moment became a powerful example of humility and respect. It was proof that no matter how much wealth or success you have, what really matters is how you treat others. The real lesson wasn't about money or status, it was about character. And now one question remains. How many times have we judged someone without truly knowing them? How many opportunities for connection and understanding have we missed simply because we relied on first impressions? This story reminds us of something essential. A person's true worth isn't in their clothing or their bank account, it's in the way they choose to treat others. And the only question that truly matters is, who do you choose to be? Did this story make you think? How many times have we judged someone without truly knowing them? Have you ever been treated unfairly because of your appearance? If so, how did you react? The truth is, how we respond to situations says more about us than it does about the people who mistreat us. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment and share your thoughts. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an inspiring story like this. Because in the end, real greatness isn't about what you have. It's about how you choose to act.